Welcome back, viewers and listeners, to another episode of Elevated Duty Podcast. Staff Sergeant Norcross along always with
Sergeant Eduardo Rivera.
And we are so happy. We are coming up into the 4th of July holiday here in the Colorado National Guard, and what a better time. I know it's a very busy schedule for our guest today. Key leader within our organization. If you'd like to introduce yourself, State Command Sergeant Major.
Good afternoon. I am the State Command Sergeant Major John Assaad, the 13th State Command Sergeant Major for the Colorado Army National Guard.
Thank you so much for being here. We know your schedule is very busy, Command Sergeant Major, so thank you for coming. I know someone had called you out to be on the podcast. Do you want to talk about that and thank them for letting you come on?
None necessary. Just know that I would never back away from a challenge, so I was challenged, and here I am.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Before we get started, I'll kind of let you introduce yourself, Command Sergeant Major. I know that for our viewers and listeners and current service members within our organization, there's a lot of information about you. We can go on to the Colorado National Guard websites. We can go on to SharePoint. We've seen biographies. I know that that's listed and available for our viewers and listeners to find, but if you'd like to kind of tell your story, start wherever you would like, going to childhood up until now or in reverse order, however you'd like to kind of introduce yourself, Command Sergeant Major.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things, I guess, written about me. What that stuff is, I'd be curious to know. So if you've come across those things, you send them my way.
Okay.
I'd love to see what's being written about me. But in all seriousness, I was born and raised in western Kansas in a small town of about 1,500 people, and came out here in Colorado in 1994, 95 time frame. My parents moved out here from western Kansas, found a new job, new opportunities in southeast Colorado, where I moved with them, and have been out here ever since. And I came out to Denver in about 1998.
Okay.
And just called Denver my home ever since. I did originally join the Kansas Guard back in '94, not to date myself. Transferred into Colorado Guard in '95, and stayed here ever since.
We'll start with Kansas.
Sure.
You said you moved with your parents here to Colorado, but joined the Kansas National Guard first. How was that in your career? How did you find out about the National Guard? Did you know you were going to join the National Guard? What was the plan for that?
None of the above. I did not know anything about the Guard. A recruiter came to my high school, which was pretty common in a town of 1,500 people. Pretty welcoming, pretty good relationship with the military apparently. And a few days later, my dad come talk to me and said, "Hey, this is something you might want to consider. They have great college benefits. Something to think about as you go to college." And so I said, "Sure, why not? You know what? Can't hurt if it's a way to pay for college for me." And so I took the opportunity, and they had to sign for me. I was 17 years old, so they had to sign with me as a co-signer.
Yep.
As I was still a minor, and so I signed on the dotted line. Went to MEPS in Amarillo, Texas, and that was the closest MEPS station to us.
Okay.
Which seems far being in Texas from Kansas, but it really was not that far of a drive away. It was about four and a half hours.
Okay.
So I went there in process, came back, and shipped off to basic training to Fortsville, Oklahoma in the summer of my junior year. Came back, finished my senior year in high school, and went back to AIT after I graduated high school.
And so when you had joined, Sergeant Major, what was the MOS that you had chosen? How was that process, speaking with your parents who talked to you about the benefits of college and the recruiter that came to the high school? You had joined as Field Artillery Cannon crew member. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I was not aware of any options, as my recruiter told me about different MOSs I could have joined in the Kansas Guard. Artillery is the only thing he pushed. As I found out, artillery unit in Garden City, Kansas, which was about 55 miles away from where I lived, was the closest and only unit there, and that was an 8-inch artillery unit.
Okay.
And so I went into 13 Bravo School. Then I later found out that when you looked at my line scores, that was really one of the few MOSs I qualified for. So imagine that, just worked itself out. So I did go into 13 Bravo School in Fortsville, Oklahoma. in basic training for 8 weeks, and then, like I said, came back, finished my senior year in high school, went back for another 8 weeks for AIT.
And so, Sergeant Major, you were a split train option. You had joined
Correct.
at 17 with parent consent, had gone off to basic training, came back, finished your senior year of high school, and then after graduation went to your advanced individual training.
Correct.
How was that experience for you? That's still an option right now if you're listening or you're watching this podcast. And the recruiters throughout the state of Colorado, we push that pretty hard. We think it's a very good thing for individuals that are trying to get a head start in their careers. How do you think that changed? Did you have other friends or family members or anybody you knew that waited until graduation to join the military? What was your experience? Do you think that it was a good thing going between your junior and senior year?
I do. It was not apparent at the time. That was not something I was looking at. I honestly didn't see the military as a 20-year career. I saw it as my initial time, my 6 years to get in, get my college money, go to college, do great things, and leave. It was what I thought was going to be a stepping stone for something else in life. Not better, not worse, just different, just where I wanted to go.
Okay.
I didn't see the military as something that was going to be in my future long term. And so the benefit of getting that year was that it was a year free of service, with really doing nothing more than going to those weekend drills. But my unit at the time was very flexible. They knew I had, high school engagements, whether it was a basketball game or whatever sports engagement I had at the time, or high school function I had at the time. They were very supportive of, go take care of this thing at school, come back and we'll find another way to get you trained, and so you get credit for the drill. So it was essentially a free year of service without really having to do a lot. I still wasn't authorized to go to annual training because I wasn't
MOS qualified. Roger.
So that I didn't have to, and I was already going to basic and AIT during the summer anyway. So that was in lieu of the annual training. So again, it was a really easy year. Something that wasn't obvious until looking back 10 years later, thinking, wow, I really did 9 years of work for 10 years.
Sure. No, that's outstanding. We try and push that pretty hard right now if you're listening. Like State Command Sergeant Major said, that year of your contract, everything's turned on, right?
Yep.
Were you able to use any of those benefits during your senior year?
I probably was, but I just didn't know it.
Sure.
Because I wasn't educated enough to understand fully what those benefits afforded to me were. Again, I was 17. I didn't... that wasn't the things I was looking at. That was apparent to me right away. I was focused on if the Bulls were going to win championships in the 90s, and I was focused on if, those things.
Sure.
So for the GI Bill and those things, I thought, I got another year in college. Wherever college takes me, I'll worry about the GI Bill then, and that's what I did.
Okay, so going back to, I know you had mentioned that you didn't think that you were going to spend a career in uniform in the military, correct, Sergeant Major?
Correct.
And so college, what was the plan with college? The split train option with the Guard, and then getting into college. Where did you attend college? What was the plan with college moving forward? What was kind of the dreams and aspirations when you did join?
My intent, because based on my family and how they were, how they thought and how they, how they were raised, education was a big deal for them to get a degree and pursue a respectable profession, whether it was, law enforcement, engineer, doctor, attorney, whatever it was, nursing, as long as I stuck with a career path and I chose it. So I chose engineering. I thought that was something that at the time, thrilled me. I just the way my brain worked. And so I did attend college at the University of Southern Colorado, which is now CSU Pueblo. Again, not to date myself. In Pueblo, Colorado. So I attended there for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, I got into that school because I wasn't smart enough. My grades weren't good enough to get into any other major college in the state. So I was not accepted into CU. I was not accepted into Colorado State. School of Mines, I'm pretty sure, laughed at me when they didn't. But I didn't even try School of Mines because when I heard about what that school was about, I thought, if those schools aren't going to take me,
pretty strong reputation. Yes,
don't waste my $25 into that one.
Sure.
So I kept it. But anyway, I got into USC in Southern Colorado, and worked to get my grades back up, become a respectable student, and then I transferred into CU Denver, University of Colorado Denver, where I pursued and completed my education in civil engineer.
Okay.
Took advantage of the GI Bill. And at the time, that was afforded to me, and graduated and stayed working as a civil engineer moving on.
you had mentioned that like during that first year in your contract through high school, that it was, fairly simple being in a traditional National Guard role as well, and that time went by pretty quickly, and there was some flexibility with the unit for you to finish your high school last senior year. Were you still drilling with the Kansas National Guard when you were attending college here in Colorado, or did you switch over to the Colorado National Guard?
No, at that point, I had switched into the Colorado Guard. I had left Kansas and started my senior year of high school in Colorado.
Okay.
So new high school in southeast Colorado, in Ordway, Colorado, in Crowley County, down by Lahana, Arkansas Valley area.
Yep.
And so I found a unit there in Lahana that was Alpha Battery 2nd, the 157th Field Artillery.
And so you were able to stay field artillery.
Correct.
And keep your same MOS when you IST'd into Colorado?
Correct.
Amazing.
Yep,
Sergeant Major.
Yep, almost a very similar type of unit, just 3 hours down the road from Garden City. And so when I found that unit, I had driven back to Kansas to drill, asked if I could transfer into this Colorado unit, and before I knew it, they said, okay, next month you show up there and everything else will catch up to you.
Pretty easy switch.
Very seamless process.
Okay.
Again, for then an 18-year-old, I had no issues. When I got to this new unit in Colorado, they welcomed me and with open arms, sent me to AIT, and went back to the same place in Fort Hill, Oklahoma, and it was great. The coincidence, though, in the small world theory proves itself again, is that I had a section chief in the Kansas Guard named Gilbert Archuleta, a fantastic human being. He was about 5'3", tall, 5'3", wide, but pure muscle, just a rock solid human being. Mm-hmm. And he was my gun chief, and I was very intimidated by that individual, even though I was a foot taller than him. I was not that taller than him, but anyway, so I was very intimidated by this guy, and he was nothing but kind to me and welcoming, and so I thought, I got to get away from this dude because he's just a scary-looking guy. Fast forward a year later, transferring to Colorado, and sure enough, he shows up in 2nd, the 157, and says, "Hey, bro, good to see you."
Wow.
And I thought, oh, God, he's my chief again.
Yeah.
But again, nothing changed, nothing skipped a beat, and he just happened to IST around the same time I did, and just a great human, and one of the few that one of the many that I'm pretty thankful to have in my life. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's
great. Just a great. It was very easy to transition into that unit when I found out he was my gun chief that I was going into again.
Yeah.
So.
It was small organization in the National Guard, and so it
is.
I love to hear stories like that because we hear it on every podcast that we talk to. Oh, people that you've served with, or schools you've been to, deployments that individuals have gone on together, and then wherever you go in the National Guard, you always seem to be able to make those friends and connections. So that's amazing, Sergeant Major. Back to that finishing school in college. How was finishing school as well as staying in the National Guard just as easy as your senior year in high school?
It was. Again, I had a pretty flexible unit that was willing to work with me on schools, but I don't recall having a lot of schedule conflicts from college events to drills. I was fortunate that most of my classes were from Monday through Thursday.
Okay.
So if I had to do a meet of 5, which is a Friday afternoon drill into Saturday, Sunday, I didn't have a lot of school conflicts and school schedule conflicts with those. I didn't play sports in college, so that wasn't a thing. I did what make it tough and a little bit bummer is that if I always wanted to attend a football game or something, it was always on a Saturday that I had drill.
Of course.
But that's life. You know, that's just the way things are going to work out at times, and that would have been no different than in a civilian work job in a conflict. If you want to go someplace, but the boss says, "Hey, I need you here tomorrow to run TPS reports," or whatever the case is.
Sure. Have to make those priorities.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to happen in any organization you go to. And so I was pretty fortunate that I didn't have a lot of those. And so to complete college was fairly feasible. I was able to work around annual training with school requirements if I had school in the summer, which was only one time I can remember I ever had summer school, like a summer course that I had to take in the summer, just the way the cards fell.
Sure.
But my unit worked with me and said, "Hey, you have to be here for these 5 days. The rest of the 6 days we can work with you." And so I had a great unit and great leadership that was good at problem solving and helped me with that stuff.
Outstanding, Sergeant Major. For your initial contract, what was your initial contract as far as timeline when you had joined?
My original contract was 6 years with 2 years of inactive. So it was what's commonly known as a 6x2.
Okay. And so finishing up your college education career, you were getting close to the tail end of that first contract. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Lead us down the next part of life when you graduated and what came next.
Graduated college?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, and I'll just be full transparent, and you'll find out as the story goes how not so great of a student I was. It did take me, like 6-7 years to graduate college. So I should have a doctorate, but all I have is a 4-year degree to show for it. And that's just the path I took. That's just the way the cards fell.
Sure.
The Guard had really nothing to do with that. That was just that was all on my side of the my side of life and decisions that I'm not going to talk about in this forum.
Fair.
But, yeah, so I did. It did take me a long time, but at that point I came to a decision. When I started dating, then my wife now, then my girlfriend, and she was very intrigued by my service and what I was doing, and I really had no good way of explaining to her what I did outside of blew things up. In artillery, that's just the easiest way to put it, just to blow something up, and that's just what we did, and we were good at it. And she thought, well, that's a very boy thing to. That's a boy thing to think about and say, and I thought, yeah, it might be, but it's so much fun doing it. So as I was graduating college and looking to start my civilian career, I came to a decision about whether I still wanted to be a part of the Guard or not. And when I was going through that decision making, it had nothing to do with whether the Guard was fulfilling for me, whether I liked my leadership or not, whether I felt like I fit in or not. None of those things crossed my mind. It was just really. For me, about as I start my civilian career, do I still want to be doing this?
Sure.
That's really all it was, as simple as it was for me. And I chose sure, and I decided to just re-enlist for 1 year. They gave me a 1 year
Just a 1 year
option.
extension.
Correct.
Okay.
And I said, sure, let me get my feet under me in my civilian career. If it still works out in the Guard, awesome. I'll reassess in a year. 12 months is an easy thing to do, and a very short term, very. Not long-term to where I thought, oh, man, I immediately regret this because my job took me elsewhere. I didn't have that to worry about. And that's just where I was at in my life.
Right.
So, it all worked out just fine.
Okay. And so when you had chosen and gotten into that civilian career, what path did you choose with the civilian career, Sergeant Major?
Civil engineer.
Okay. And that kept you here in Colorado?
That did.
With that year-long extension, that's a pretty popular option that we're starting to see right now. If you're listening and you're a service member in the Colorado National Guard, it's not talked about as much as some of the other, re-enlistments or extensions. Usually there's not a bonus with a 1 year extension. Sometimes these soldiers, they don't even know it's an option. What did you feel like you learned and was able to keep you during that year? You became and got that kind of dream job you were looking for out of college, and you were still in that 1 year extension. What happened in that year that now did you extend after that 1 year extension?
I did. So I did that 1 year extension for about 4 consecutive years.
Oh, wow.
I really did. I was that guy. And I wasn't trying to hold out for something better. I wasn't trying to hold out for some bonus I knew that I wasn't going to get. None of that really played a factor in my decision. What I really wanted to do was validate that I could balance, my civilian career with what the Guard still had to offer. Because at that point, I wasn't, again, getting bonuses. I wasn't driven. And that's just the way I thought back then. And but I just enjoyed doing it. It was fun. I loved going down range and being in the field and shooting every month.
Yeah.
That's what we did. And we spent long days and long hours. But the folks that I was there with in the dirt, in the rain, in the mud, and the snow was just they were just great people, and just valued the time to hang out with them.
Sure.
Even if there were times where we were not too busy and we were talking about the greatest football team ever assembled.
Yeah.
Go. What's your lineup?
Yeah.
And that's the stuff we talked about down there. And I those are the things you're just going to take with you that stick with you for years to come. So I did that for about 3 to 4 years until I finally hit the 10-year mark.
Okay.
And once I hit 10 years. I had a good talk with my wife about whether I wanted to stick around and do it longer. And everybody was like, "Well, you're at the halfway point, and what's another 10 years going to be?" And again, none of that was really a sticking point in my mind. Not to say it wasn't important, just wasn't what I thought about at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided to to say, cool, I made it 10 years. I'm just in it for the long haul. So I signed another 6-year. I did sign a 6-year deal at that point, and just figured, why not just go to 20?
Okay. Now, being on the enlisted side, especially with the college education, what made you personally continue down the enlisted route rather than, was there ever a question of, other possibilities within the Guard? Did that ever cross your mind, or what kept you on the enlisted side, Sergeant Major?
Funny you say that. There was about 2003 timeframe. I was about a year away from graduating college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with the former Adjutant General, General Whitney, Mason Whitney. He was the TAG at the time. And then General Crowder. And we were in Colorado Springs supporting a mission. I was doing force protection for him at the time. And they invited me out to lunch, and they just started talking to me. Great individuals. And they asked me about my education background. I said, yeah, I'm going to school for civil engineers and graduate in about a year.
Right.
And General Crowder looked at me and said, have you ever thought about being an field artillery officer?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, absolutely not. To be quite honest. And he said, well, you should really consider it. We're short artillery officers, and I'd be willing to offer you a direct commission, because we were short FA officers at the time. And
commission.
He said, you're a year from graduating, so college is going to be a problem. If you wish to accept, let me know, and we can get the paperwork pushed through. And General Whitney just nodded and concurred and supported. And fast forward a few months later, and the deal fell through. It didn't work out, but at the same time, it was a blessing. Obviously, I did okay. A
little more than okay. I would say.
Thank you. I did all right in my career path and choice. I think back going down the officer route, would that have what would that have looked like?
Right.
I don't know. It's a bunch of woulda, shoulda, couldas at that point, and it could have gone great. I could be sitting here before you as an 05 or
Sure.
an 06, or I could be sitting before you as a captain because I just wasn't a very good officer. I don't know. I don't think about those times. I just look back on what I could influence as an enlisted soldier and the people I could affect and help out, and here I am today.
Yeah. No, it's funny that your comment when asked about it, it's kind of the same thing it's unspoken voice in my head or somewhere deep down. I'm not sure where it comes from when you said you were thinking about the officer and you said, oh, heck no, there's no way. That's kind of been my philosophy as well. And we've had leaders come to, Sergeant Rivera's looking at possibly transferring pretty soon here, correct?
Yeah.
To the OCS side.
Chapter 2 physical completed. I'm just waiting on my college transcripts, and we got a new commander, so I need commander interview and commander letter of recommendation, and my packet is complete. So.
Yeah.
Good for you. Congratulations.
And
thanks, Sergeant Major.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Command Sergeant Major, is, it doesn't matter what you do in this organization. The paths that are let out, I always like to think of the National Guard as like a tree and the different branches that we can go down. Mm-hmm. And the branch that you chose, it's led you to where you are today, very successful. Tell us how hard that is. As an E6 and an E5 and NCOs that are going to be coming to OCS, not a lot of junior soldiers kind of know the pipeline of, when you decided, okay, I'm going to extend, let's do a 6-year, I'm not going the officer route. What was the path? Did you have aspirations to become, a first sergeant and then sergeant major and then state command sergeant major? How did that lead you to where you are now on your non-commissioned officer role?
Yeah, so I did not have aspirations to be a CSM or a first sergeant. I actually didn't think I was going to make it past sergeant first class, based on where I was at in my career and coming right off of a fairly difficult deployment in support of Iraqi freedom in 2009 and 10. Mm-hmm. I thought, being as an E7 when I came back was going to be where I was at, and I was comfortable with that. And it just, things worked out that there was a couple of first sergeant vacancies open that I was really not 100% sure I was going to board for or interview for at the time, and I was encouraged by my first sergeant to really put in a packet, and so I did, and it just worked out. But yeah, no, I didn't have those aspirations. So I when I was afforded those opportunities and selected for those positions, I just did the best I could to make the most out of them.
Okay.
And if an opportunity to be a sergeant major was going to be down the road, I was going to deal with that then. But in no way was I really in the mindset of pursuing, and again, just me. This was just how
Sure.
I thought.
Sure.
In no way did I take first sergeant in order to make sergeant major. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just focused on trying to be the best first sergeant I could be at the time. And if I did well enough, that was going to be seen. And if I did poor enough, that was going to be seen. So,
Right.
and let the cards fall where they fell.
Right. Going back to, when you had graduated with your engineer degree, you have stayed in the same MOS your entire career. Is that correct, Command Sergeant Major?
I have,
as far as the artillery side?
Artillery side, yes. Yeah.
With that engineer background, did that help you, do you think, for those, viewers and listeners or current service members that are wanting to attend college or get kind of that additional education or have a background? Do you think that helped you in your specific MOS? Because I know there's probably a lot of similarities between launching rockets and engineer math, I assume.
There can be. That just wasn't the kind of engineering I went into.
Okay.
So I specialized in civil, which meant a lot of design of structures, land development, and infrastructure design like storm sewer, water lines, sanitary sewer, drainage. Those are the things, bridge design, highway design. Those are the things that I specialized in. So as far as, literally rocket science, that is echelons above my pay grade.
Okay.
Those are things that look cool and sound cool, and that's about as far as I can talk to them.
You know what's funny?
Huh.
He built stuff on the civilian side and he destroyed it in the military side.
And that's the balance. So that's how it benefited me. It was a common balance. I did not want to be stovepiped in a career where I wanted to be doing design and engineering in my civilian career and then join the Army Corps of Engineers and then do that on the Army side. I wanted a balance of extremes.
Right.
So to Sergeant Rivera's point, I did. I spent a little bit of my time destroying things and the majority of my time building them.
Yeah.
And it was a great balance for me.
Yeah, yin and yang. That's kind of
correct.
funny
And
how it works out.
It did. It's exactly right. It wasn't. It was just pure coincidence. It wasn't by design. But how it did help me is that being an engineer, there's a certain kind of thinking for engineers, and it's very kind of logical structure. I don't want to say flow diagram or anything like that, but there's some sort of a flow process. Correct. It's a it's a structured, logical decision-making process, and so that's helped me a lot in my leadership, decision-making, and a lot of things that I've had to assess and look at over my career. And so when I hear something, I'm sure to fact-find first before I make an assumption or an opinion about it.
Sure.
No matter who it came from, even if it's one of my most trusted people, and they make and a generalized statement is made to me, I will fact-find before I draw a conclusion to myself.
Yeah, I think that's a great leadership trait. You had mentioned your tours. Do you want to touch base on the tours that you've done, some of the schools that you've attended? I know, we've seen, again, the biography that's listed, but during your path, what kind of steps and what schools had led to kind of where you are now, to include your deployments? Do you want to touch that part of your career, Sergeant Major?
Sure. The deployments I went on in support of Iraqi freedom, it was we deployed with the 115th Field Artillery Brigade, I guess then Fires Brigade, out of Wyoming, and they took 4 battalions with them. There were organic second, I think it's a 2-300 out of Wyoming. They took the 3157 out of Colorado, and then a couple of battalions up north from, I think, South Dakota and, maybe I'm wanting to say Montana, but I'm drawing a blank on who the 4th battalion was. But that was essentially the unit that was taken.
Okay.
So we went forward in support of OIF, and 3157 was the only battalion that went forward into Iraq, where the other stayed in Kuwait and did log runs, log missions in and out of various parts of the region, whatever their missions were. So we were stationed in Ramadi, Camp Ramadi in the Al Anbar province of Iraq, and we did our security. We were a security force detail, and not a field artillery unit. That's what that back then, there was not a need for field artillery type units in that specific war and conflict, and they really just needed bodies and more security force personnel, and that's what we were utilized for.
Okay. With you staying in artillery, what kept you? We talk with a lot of people that come on, people that want to come on, people that we serve alongside, and one thing that we kind of see, it's about 50-50. Sometimes a service member will choose a job and stick in that career path, and then sometimes people branch out and get different MOSs. What made you stick with artillery? Why was that home, and what kept you there as home?
I loved it, and I love the people, the training, the op tempo, the being able to stay in the field. Yeah, there were plenty of hard drills and tough drills and bad drills.
Sure.
But never would I look back and say my time was wasted. Even if it was a 3-hour block where it seemed like I wasn't doing a whole lot of times, and sure, those times happened.
Oh, yeah.
But I never looked back and was like, man, I sat around for 3 hours a day. That never crossed my mind. What crossed my mind is, man, I stayed up till 2 in the morning today shooting all night, and then I had to wake up for a 0.5 time on target.
Yeah.
And I got 3 hours of sleep, but I woke up half delirious, but somehow we were safe, and somehow we fired that mission effectively, and we met our objective and our time on target, and then we got to pack up and go home and do it again the month after, and it was great.
Yeah, that's amazing. The leadership that you kind of received during your career and getting you to the point to where you are now, what traits of leadership did you value the most that you think that now you have in turn given the organization?
I'll just open up a little story about this one.
Sure.
And this is something I was going to share during my retirement speech, but I'll just give you a little heads up on it anyway. So back in, I can't remember the exact time frame, but we were in annual training, and I was a gun chief at the time. And I was around my weapon system. We were on the 109s at that time, A5s, not the Paladins, but we were. I was doing some position improvement. I was out there just kind of doing some stuff around my gun line, and my first sergeant came up, said, "Hey, Sergeant, do you mind if you have a second? I'd like to talk to you." And I said, "Absolutely, Top." And so I ran over there towards his little makeshift tent area, and kicks back with a cup of coffee and uniform. And he says, "Hey, I've been your first sergeant for about 6-7 months now, and I just wanted to kind of gauge and assess with you about how I'm doing. Am I meeting your needs as a first sergeant? Am I doing the things I need to be doing for this unit?" And I sat there and I kind of thought about it for a little bit, kind of looked him up and down, and I thought, and my response was, "I don't think you're asking the right guy." And he kind of looked at me real puzzled, and I said, I honestly don't really know what you do. I don't know what a first sergeant does. And I was just being honest at the time. And he looked at me real puzzled at that point. He didn't yell at me. He didn't get angry or anything.
Sure.
He just looked at me like that's the answer? That's what you're coming back with? And I said, yeah. I said, so I really don't know if I'm the right person you should be asking. But I appreciate it. I think you're doing okay. I think you're meeting my needs. I have no complaints. I haven't heard any complaints. Left it at that. And I said, well, I'm at it. I've been one of your gun chiefs. How do you think I'm doing? And I'm pretty sure he said, "You're the best thing I've ever seen." He may not have said that. I'm not quite sure. Might have been totally
Wouldn't
fabricated.
surprise me.
Right. So anyway, we ended the conversation. I came walking back to my gun line, about 100 meters out. And as I'm walking, I thought to myself, I was not replaying the conversation in my mind. In no way, shape, or form did I have the need to go out and research what a first sergeant does so I could educate him back and give him a better answer.
Right.
What crossed my mind with him was that his hair was perfectly gelled and slicked back. He had a perfectly trimmed mustache, clean shaven. His BDUs were pressed. His black boots were spit shined. And he smelled like Old Spice. Now, I will tell you, after about 6-7 days in the field with no shower, Old Spice smells pretty amazing. I never thought I would say that, but it does. And so the thing that crossed my mind was that dude's been going back into the rear and getting showers, and we weren't. And so I made the commitment to myself right then and there that I would never do anything or ask my soldiers to do anything that I either not done or I'm not willing to do myself with them. And that's really what everyone has heard about the be, no, do, lead by example. And all those things are great and absolutely true. And to me, they're a little more than just buzzwords. But when you see an example like that in your life and your career where it's actually been applied, yeah, and at that point, he was no longer a first sergeant to me. He was just another guy. Sure, was he my top? Was that the guy I was going to report to and stand in parade rest and address appropriately? Absolutely. But as far as what I visioned a leader, was not him. And I made sure to never put myself in a position where I was going to be perceived that way.
I like that a lot.
So that's kind of what that was one of my biggest learning moments as an E5, as a young gun chief. About what not to do. Yeah. And so I have a lot to thank him for teaching me that lesson.
That's a really good story, and I think that hits home probably for a lot of service members that are listening or watching right now. I like something to go back that you talked about, Sergeant Major, is that When we have interviewed and been lucky enough to interview a lot of key leadership in very high positions that have climbed the ranks, either on the enlisted, warrant, officer side of things, the answer kind of has always been the same of none of these individuals had that aspiration to be that 06, to be that star, to be that state CSM. What you had said was the positions of leadership that you were put in and applied for and offered, you just did the best job that was appropriate at that time, which led to the further success of your career, correct?
Yeah.
So what advice for those, especially on the enlisted side, those privates and those, soon to be junior non-commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers that I'm sure aren't thinking that they might be the next state command sergeant major watching, or that next tag, that junior lieutenant. What advice would you give for them in their careers as far as leadership goes?
Sure. I would tell them very simply, have your goals. Have your eye on the ball, whatever that ball is. A few years down the road, with my ball was very close to me. Mm-hmm. As I said, when I was just focused on doing the best job I could, and I was going to let the cards fall where they fell down the road. Mm-hmm. It's okay to have your ball on being an E9. There's nothing wrong with that. Have that goal, but just don't remember, don't forget, and don't overlook what you're doing in the moment. Keep an eye on that. Keep your focus on that, because if you're focused on that and you're doing the best job you can and you do a good job, whatever that ball is that you're waiting for down the road is going to come to you.
Yeah.
It just will. Your merits are going to speak for themselves. Your performance, your potential, all those things are going to speak for themselves, and it's going to come to you. It may not come in the time that you think it's going to come. If you think it should be here in a year and it might take you 2 more years, sometimes that's the way life goes. There's a lot of weird little lefts and rights that you might have to take to get there, but eventually you will get there, and you have to be patient enough to see it and not be discouraged when you veer off the main path before you get back on it.
Yeah.
Have that resilience, dominate in the face of adversity. And just take it for nothing more than what it is. It's just a hiccup that you're going to recover from, get back on the road, and that shiny object, that ball, whatever you had your eyeball on, is going to be there in the end for you.
That's great.
I think we have that, and everyone we talk to, we don't care, and that's what I love in the National Guard is we don't care what your goals are, whether on the civilian side or the military side. We will help you achieve both, and if you want to focus solely on the civilian aspect of your career and do this part-time and keep those minimum requirements, I think that that's what the National Guard is there for. Or we will give you as much as you can handle and start throwing it at you throughout your goals that you had just mentioned, and that bright shiny object and chasing those. What are some of the most memorable for you? What are the milestones in your career that really have meant a lot for you?
Oh, I'm not sure if they were milestones. The most memorable things for me that I look at were just the worst days. The days where I woke up with 7 inches of snow on the ground. The day where it was just, the high that day was going to be 5 degrees, and you were sitting in a metal box called the 109 howitzer that had no heater, and because metal doesn't heat itself. And you sat there just shivering away trying to get through that next fire mission so you could finally walk that 50 meters down the field to that GP medium tent with the potbelly stove in it, just to walk into that thing at 3 a.m. and find out all the diesel fuel was burned out, so you had no more heat. Those are the days that I remember thinking, how miserable is this at the time, but 2 days later thinking that was the most awesome thing I've ever seen, and I would do it again in a heartbeat because of the people that you were there with, suffered with you, and there's something about the thought of misery loves company and collective misery that just that makes a team stronger, more cohesive, more dangerous. Yeah. All the above that you would follow those men and women anywhere on earth and back, and they'd follow you too because you've embraced that hardship with them, and it takes something that small to make such a lasting memory. And I've got 30 years of those things that I take back, and those are the things that I remember. Those are my milestones.
It's funny you talk about kind of embracing the suck. We bring individuals on, and if you're listening or watching, everybody knows the benefits and incentives for the most part of the military. and you've been afforded them, and you were able to use them for schooling and taking care of stuff. And I'm sure you've used probably at this point in your career, Sergeant Major, most, if not all, the benefits that are incentives that are available for service members. But when we ask individuals what means most, or why do they come back to serve, or why do they continue to serving, that brotherhood and sisterhood that you mentioned, Sergeant Major, that's the answer that rings home, that we see,
And those moments, people are like, it wasn't that fun back then, but then now it's like a good memory in my mind.
It's priceless. Benefits and incentives, it's tangible goods, and they're very valuable for things in life, but that experience with the people that you serve with, that's priceless. You can't put a price on that. But to go back to what you were saying with hardships, in your career, how long are you coming up on as far as total years of service, State Command Sergeant Major?
I just crossed over 30 years in March. So when it's all said and done, thank you. When it's all said and done and I retire, it'll be just under 31 years. It'll be 30 years, 9 months, and 8 days. But who's counting?
Not like you're counting.
I am counting.
That's crazy. When you were 10, you were like, I'll do 10 more.
Yeah.
And then now you're here, almost 31.
Yeah.
Wow.
Once I hit 20, I knew I was on borrowed time.
Sure.
Nothing for me was guaranteed after 20 years. And I've been afforded a lot of things, been blessed with a lot of things, been fortunate enough with a lot of things that worked my way and did not work my way. And I took advantage of every one of those opportunities and learned from it, and here I am today.
Going back to the hardships and, again, a phenomenal, amazing career, how would you describe the kind of work-life balance? I know you had mentioned your wife, and for the current viewers and listeners, we get that question on the recruiting side of things. When people come in and say, the National Guard, and they don't even know, how long am I going to be away from my family, or those that are currently in right now serving and having to make those sacrifices, especially over 30 years. How was that for you and your family? How did you work through it?
For my wife and I, it was a lot of communication. That was the important thing, because I'll tell you, in the Guard, in my career, everything that we ever did, nothing was unpredictable. Nothing came out of the blue.
Can you touch base more on that, State Command Sergeant Major, for those that don't know?
Sure, absolutely. So what I was saying is, you indicated service members wouldn't know how long they were going to be gone for. I did, and I believe that every leader should educate their folks on the training requirements. Annual training is going to be 2 weeks. If you're going to do a warfighter, you're probably looking at 3 weeks, but you're not told that 3 weeks a week out. You know what I mean? You're not told. I'm not looking at Sergeant Norcross saying, hey, we have a warfighter to go to in Pennsylvania, and we're leaving next week for 3 weeks. And now all of a sudden you're left scrambling at home to get things prepared. You knew about the warfighter probably 5 months ago, 6 months ago, ideally longer than that.
Yep.
And so to have those conversations with your family and predictability and planning, I think is very important and is a key to being able to manage things at home. Whether you have kids, you don't have kids, you have pets, you don't have pets,
sure.
You're caring for a parent, whatever your circumstance is at home, whether you have school, work, all those things take really solid, direct communication with the other party. So you have the predictability and the planning to be able to be gone. Deployments, when they come up, I know that the big key right now and the big talk has been a fight tonight type of mentality. But we're still getting notification of sourcings almost a year out.
Yep.
And so no one is getting deployed saying, hey, you're leaving in 4 hours, leave.
Right.
Those things are still pretty predictable. And that deployment's going to be whatever that timeline is, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 9 months, what that time's going to be. What your weekend drills are going to look like because they're published a year in advance. Now, with all that said and done, is it easy? Absolutely not. It is not easy, and it takes work, and it takes a supportive spouse, and it takes a backbone of your family to be able to let people like you and I do the things that we do.
Yep.
And I believe our families are the backbone of why we serve. They say we're the backbone of the Army.
Sure.
But they're the backbone of us, and they're the reasons we do it, and they're one of 350 million reasons that we do it in this country. And without them, it makes our job harder, obviously. But again, that constant work, it's like marriage. It's just constant work, and constant communication, and it looks different for everybody. I wish there was one cookie cutter solution that I could look you in the face and say, this is what I did and this is what you should do.
Sure.
But that's not reality. Everyone's going to have to find their way, just like it took me 7 years to graduate with a 4-year degree versus somebody that might have taken only 3 years to graduate with a 4-year degree.
Yep.
It works out different for everybody. Everyone's got to find that way and be committed and disciplined to that goal and find that solution.
Yeah, and shout out to the military family members that
Absolutely.
may be watching or listening. I love that a lot. So communication, and I love how you tie that back, Command Sergeant Major, with communication and planning on the family side is just as important, if not more important, and it ties directly into the leaders currently in our organization. And going back to what you had said earlier, is you would not put yourself or make your soldiers do something that you wouldn't do, and so give them that heads up and give them those, those timelines and what's to be expected and what's not. So moving forward, communication and planning. With the retirement that you had mentioned coming up, what is the planning and communication looking like with the next step in your life, State Command Sergeant Major?
The next step in my life, as in, could you please elaborate?
After the military. I know you said the word retirement. Mm-hmm. So what's next?
I was fortunate in the majority of my career to be an M-Day soldier, a traditional soldier. So I have a civilian career I can fall back on, which I fully intend to go back to that career in the civil engineering realm, mm-hmm. and just working my days like a regular human, and I can finally be that regular person doing regular things versus the regular person doing superhero things like everyone else in this life is doing. So I look forward to that. I'm not leaving a. What's the best way I can put this? I have my glory days ahead of me. I did not live my glory days in the past. They always say high school is your best years, or the time that you were 20, you should have done this. And those are some great days. They were, no doubt about it. There were also some rough days. But I truly believe that my glory days are ahead of me. My career might be phasing out and coming to an end, but that is, it's not a funeral. It is. It's just
right.
It's just one chapter. It's chapter whatever in my little personal book of life that I close and I turn back over to a new chapter, and we'll see what those adventures have for me. So I look forward to the endless possibilities of what that life looks like when I have the coolest mustache or the greatest beard or whatever hair I can grow afterwards. And I'm gonna give it all. I'm gonna try it. So
man.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, congratulations again,
Thank you.
State Command Sergeant Major.
Thank you.
We have seen an impact that's going to be pretty big boots to fill. Any words of advice or wisdom for whoever the replacement may be? I know the private news network is rumbling right now, and there's been some talk, and we've heard some things. Mm-hmm. But any advice for who will be taking over?
So Command Sergeant Major Eric Miller out of the 168th RTI will be has been announced as my replacement. Fantastic individual, and he's going to bring a lot to the organization. He's already ahead of me in a lot of things that he's going to be able to bring to the table where I fell short on. And so the organization is going to be in great hands for years to come under his leadership and under his tenure.
Yeah, amazing. We kind of end the podcast. Before we end with the kind of final two things, I kind of want to just open the table for you, State Command Sergeant Major. Is there anything, I know you're very busy, but is there anything that we missed today that you would like to talk about or tell the organization? Any other stories you'd like to recap on while we have you here and lucky enough to have you?
Man, nothing is coming to mind on that one. I think if there were some parting words, if anything, as I wind down my last few months in service, I will tell you it. Like I said, be goal oriented. Have your eye on the ball, but don't overlook what you're doing in the present. Your reputation is all you have, and that'll carry you a long way, or that'll end your career very short. And that all depends on you. And it's very easy to make a mistake or do something that you were oblivious to at the time, that you find out, months or years down the road that had an adverse effect.
Sure.
So surround yourself with the folks that you trust, that you know will keep you honest. And take those words of advice recommendations seriously. And even if you don't know them, take their recommendation, because they probably see something you don't see.
Right.
Nobody's intentions are ever bad, but sometimes if you don't ask the right questions, it could be perceived as bad. And that goes in anything, whether it's here in service, whether it's in I've had that thing happen in my engineering career and my civilian life. Mm-hmm. It could happen anywhere, because at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all perfectly flawed. It's just how we are. Yep. And keep working. It takes discipline. It takes commitment. It takes dedication. It takes tenacity. It takes resilience. It takes being dangerous, being a risk taker, jumping off that ledge and not knowing where you're going to land. Nobody in my family ever joined or served in the U.S. military. I was the first.
You're the first?
So when I got put on a bus at God knows where, out of Garden City, Kansas, to who knows where, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I didn't know what to expect. I jumped off the cliff and thought, oh, Jesus, I hope I land okay. And it worked out. It worked out well. And I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of things I've had in my career, and to meet the people I've gotten to meet, and to work with the people I've gotten to work with. And whether they're here on a national level and an international level, I've gotten to meet some pretty neat people and do some pretty cool things. But I'll tell you, I was not, as you can tell by me talking, I was not an A student. I was not a first-time go soldier.
Yeah.
And I have the land scores to show it. But what I did have was a big enough chip on my shoulder to work at it, to overcome my adversities, overcome my shortcomings, and be disciplined enough to get to where I got to today. So if you have that eye on the ball, no matter what setback you have, it can be overcome.
Yeah.
You just have to believe.
That's very humbling, Command Sergeant Major. We always kind of close the podcast with two things, and you kind of covered it in the last just now, but we usually ask, hey, piece of advice, and you covered that pretty hard and really in depth. Or we ask for a quote. Is there, you have the story when you were coming up. Is there any quotes or another piece of advice you'd like to give to soldiers currently serving, the community, anything you would like to say that you have learned or want to pass on? And then part two, who would you like to challenge to come on and tell their story next?
So I'll tell you, I will not be challenging anybody.
No one.
I will not. I will not do that in this forum.
Okay.
If I have a few people in mind, but I will ask them to their face to do it. And nothing against this. It's just not.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep those. I'll keep that to myself. In closing, what I would offer is, you're going to have a lot of rough days in service, just like you will in your personal lives, just like you will in your civilian employers' lives in that embark. But don't ever let the bad days or the bad moments ever overshadow the good ones, because they're easy to hold on to, and they're easy to gravitate to and to hang on to, and over time, when you have that constantly in your mind, humans have a tendency of always just end up going to that place of negativity. But don't ever let them overshadow the good ones, because at the end of the day, the good ones are the memories you're going to hang on to, and they help shape who you are. The bad days help shape who you are. Doesn't define who you are, just help shape who you were.
Right.
And as long as you're learning and growing, and you're trying to be the best version of yourself you can be, by just small improvements every day, you can't go wrong. You're going to be successful as a human, no matter whether you're in uniform, no matter whether you're post-military, whether you've never served. It doesn't matter. You keep those things in mind, and it's just going to make you a better person all around, a better spouse, a better employee, a better employer, a better supervisor, a better leader, whatever it is that you're aspiring to be.
Yeah, I'll take that to heart. I know I will, and I'm sure the organization will as well.
That's great.
Kind of easier to smile than it is to frown and find that goal and that shiny object and run with it.
Yeah.
We'd like to be kind of, officially kind of the first. I'm sure you've had it before, but congratulations, State Command Sergeant Major.
Thank you.
An outstanding legacy, an amazing career with this organization. I've seen your impact directly on the soldiers within our organization, and nothing but good things for everyone we talk to. So I know you have a lot coming up with the retirement, and it's going to be very busy for you. So thank you for coming down and taking the time today. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the soldiers of this organization. There was nothing I did personally that I accomplished personally that got me to where I am today. I had the help of a lot of supportive soldiers, a lot of supportive leaders, a lot of, the good and the bads. They all helped me get to where I am today. So this was nothing I did purely on my own and out of my own merits. It took a team effort and, a village of chiefs and, and I've been over the moon just to be where I'm at today and to ride off on this high note. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So if you're liking the content, like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, CO National Guard, CO National Guard.
Yes.
Yep. Tell a friend. It's a good place to be.
That's great.
Amazing.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. That was great.
State Command
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Freaking standing.